Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going deep on a case that's all over the news.
Yeah, pretty big one.
And one that's super relevant for all our UPSC aspirants out there getting ready for their mains exams.
Definitely hitting on those international relations and legal frameworks.
You got it. It's the SEC investigation of Gautam Adani.
Definitely a case with some international implications.
That's putting it mildly.
And shows how tricky enforcing laws across borders can be.
So true. It's not just financial regulations, right?
Right. It gets into international treaties, even diplomatic relations.
Okay, so for those needing a refresher, the SEC, that's the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, they're basically the watchdog for American finance.
Keeping things fair, protecting investors, the whole 9 yards.
Exactly. And they're alleging Gautam Adani, along with his brother Sagar Adani, were involved in a pretty massive bribery scheme.
We're talking over $250 million, allegedly.
Wow, that's not small change.
Aimed at Indian officials, supposedly to help Adani Group get their solar projects going.
So, smoothing the way, so to speak.
That's the allegation, at least.
And what's interesting is the SEC is going after both criminal and civil charges.
Yeah, that's a two-pronged approach. Criminal, meaning the government says a crime happened. Civil, focusing on resolving disputes and potential fines.
Got it. Now, they want to serve them with summons those legal papers, officially notifying someone about the proceedings.
Standard procedure, right.
Sounds like it. But I'm guessing there's a wrinkle here.
Oh, there is. The Adani brothers, they're in India.
Ah, okay. So that's where things get interesting. We can't just, send a process server across the globe and call it a day. I was reading The Hindu about a treaty, the Hague Service Convention. Is that what this is all about?
You nailed it. That's the crux of the matter.
So break it down for us. What is this convention all about?
Basically, an agreement between countries, over 80 of them, including India and the U.S. It lays out a system for serving those legal documents across borders.
To avoid confusion, and I guess keep legal stuff running somewhat smoothly between different countries.
You got it. Think of the logistical headache without it.
Total diplomatic nightmare.
Yeah.
But if India and the U.S. are both in this convention, what's the problem?
Here's where it gets extra interesting, especially for those UPSC folks. When India signed on, they added some conditions, what are called reservations.
Ah, okay. So like fine print.
In a way, yeah. And one of these is key here. India insists ANY legal papers from foreign courts have to go through a specific route, their Ministry of Law and Justice.
So no direct service to the person. It has to go through the Indian government.
That's their stance.
That seems potentially slow.
It could be the ministry becomes the gatekeeper, they examine it all. They could even refuse to serve the summons if they think it's not right or clashes with Indian law.
Wow. Talk about a hurdle.
And here's another twist. Even if someone in India doesn't physically get a summons, Indian courts can still issue a default judgment against them under certain circumstances.
Okay, now that raises some eyebrows. Is that fair?
Yeah.
What about due process? Imagine being held accountable for a case in India without even being properly notified. This whole situation is like a delicate diplomatic dance with the Ministry of Law and Justice leading the way. So where do we go from here? What are the possible scenarios?
That's the million-dollar question, and one we'll definitely unpack in the next part of our deep dive.
Ooh, cliffhanger. But before we go,
Don't forget, everyone.
especially our UPSC crew, hit that like button, subscribe, and leave us your thoughts, questions, whatever's on your mind, down in the comments. Love hearing from you all.
Absolutely.
And just a reminder, this whole deep dive is based on a recent article from The Hindu, so go check that out for more.
Good stuff.
Now, back to those possible scenarios in the Adani case.
Picking up where we left off, the Ministry of Law and Justice in India, they're holding a pretty crucial piece of this whole puzzle now.
They do, don't they?
Have to decide what to do with that U.S. request to serve Gautam Adani with those summons.
Yeah, no small decision. Could have a real ripple effect.
Absolutely, not just for this case, but for how international legal stuff works together going forward.
Like setting a precedent.
Exactly. So it's like India's at this crossroads, each path leading to different outcomes.
Paths, crossroads. You're getting poetic on us.
Just trying to make it interesting.
Well, you are. So let's explore those paths. What happens if India says, sure, U.S. will cooperate fully? How does that play out?
In that scenario, the ministry, they formally serve Gautam and Sagar Adani with those summons.
Simple as that.
More or less, yeah. And that gets the ball rolling, legally speaking, both in India, AD, the U.S.
Potentially a legal battle on two fronts, then.
Could be. And knowing the Adani Group, their resources...
They might not go down without a fight.
You think?
I'm just saying, what if they challenge those summons or just flat out refuse to cooperate with the U.S. investigation?
It's a possibility. They could argue the U.S. has no jurisdiction over Adani, or that the charges are bogus, maybe even politically motivated.
It could get messy.
Oh, for sure. This could turn into years of legal wrangling, courts in both countries involved.
High-stakes legal chess. But let's flip the board. What if India goes the opposite way? No cooperation with the U.S. What happens then?
Diplomatically, that could get sticky. The U.S. might say India is breaking its promises under that Hague Convention.
Strained relations?
Could be. Maybe even retaliation from the U.S. Think trade agreements, other areas of cooperation. Things could get chilly.
So big consequences either way, not just for Adani, but for India and the U.S. as a whole. Really shows how legal stuff and politics get all tangled up.
Always does in the real world.
Is it a simple yes or no for India, though? Or is there some wiggle room, a middle ground?
You're right. Rarely so black and white in diplomacy. There's a potential third option, kind of a gray area. India could drag their feet without outright saying no.
Delay tactics.
Exactly. Raise procedural issues, ask the U.S. for more details, maybe even start their own investigation into the allegations.
Buying time. Making things harder for the U.S. and for Adani, maybe giving him a chance to figure out his next move. But what'll make India decide? It's a tough spot to be in.
No doubt. They're juggling a lot. How strong the U.S. evidence is, that's a big one.
If the SEC's case is airtight,
then India might want to cooperate. Avoid looking bad internationally, damaging their reputation.
But if the evidence is weak, seems politically motivated.
They might hesitate.
It's a balancing act, isn't it? International commitments, national interests, AIND, domestic politics, all mixed in. No wonder this case is getting so much attention.
And we haven't even talked about the economic side.
Oh, right. Adani's businesses, they're huge.
Massive influence on the Indian economy.
So if he's found guilty?
Could shake investor confidence in his companies. Stock prices could drop, and that ripples out to other sectors.
Like a domino effect.
Yeah.
One legal case in one country impacting economies across the globe.
Exactly. It highlights how interconnected everything is these days. Legal, political, economic, it's all tangled up.
And this whole Hague Convention thing.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Shows that these international agreements, they do have some power. We create a system for working together legally across borders.
True.
But also shows the limits. Countries can still work the system, interpret things their own way, put their interests first.
It's not perfect, that's for sure.
But a step towards some structure in international legal stuff. And for our UPSC folks, this case is like a crash course.
It really is.
International relations, legal frameworks, how domestic and global politics mix, it's all here. Real-world example of how those dry legal concepts actually matter. Sheep diplomacy, economies, the whole deal.
And this deep dive, it's not over yet.
Back for the final part of our Adani deep dive. We've covered the charges, the Hague Convention, and the possible outcomes. Now let's take a broader view. What does this all mean in the big picture?
Well, this case could set a precedent. You know, how similar international legal fights are handled down the road.
Like a ripple effect.
Exactly. It could shape how countries approach working together legally, extradition treaties, going after folks accused of financial wrongdoing, all of that.
So if India cooperates with the U.S. this time,
could make things smoother in future cases, both for India going after people abroad and the other countries seeking individuals in India.
Makes sense.
And it's not just about specific cases. It might make countries rethink their own laws on bribery and corruption.
No one wants to be seen as a safe haven for people dodging justice, especially when it comes to money.
Especially then.
Now, this is important for our UPSC folks. Imagine an essay question on Adani and what it means for India's foreign policy.
It's a prime example.
India's relationship with the U.S., their stance on international legal stuff, their commitment to fighting corruption globally, it's all connected.
A textbook case, you could say.
Exactly. And the economic angle.
Yeah.
Adani's businesses are huge.
No kidding.
If he's found guilty.
Could really shake things up. Investor confidence in his companies takes a hit, stock prices fall. And that impacts other sectors too.
It all trickles down.
Exactly.
A legal case in one place having these huge economic consequences all over. It shows how interconnected everything is.
No doubt.
This whole thing also brings up corporate accountability. You know, what happens when a company is found guilty of corruption? What about their shareholders, employees, the people they affect?
Big questions.
That go way beyond just Adani. It's about ethical behavior in business as a whole.
A fundamental issue.
And we can't forget the media's role. This case is all over the news, both in India and globally.
It's a spotlight.
And that scrutiny is only going to increase as things develop,
Mm-hmm.
putting pressure on both governments to be
Right.
transparent, to make sure justice is served.
The media is like a watchdog, right? Keeping those in power in check.
For sure. And an informed public, people talking about this stuff, that's crucial.
Absolutely. Stops these cases from getting swept under the rug.
So as we wrap up, what's the one thing you really want our listeners to take away from all this?
I think it's that this case is bigger than just the individuals involved. It's about international law evolving, the difficulties of governing globally, the need for ethical behavior in business A&D politics.
Well said. The Adani case is like a window into how legal stuff, politics, and economics all work together. For our UPSC folks, it's a gold mine. Dig into these themes, analyze the arguments, use it all to write great essays and have informed discussions. And to everyone listening, stay curious. Keep asking questions. Never stop exploring how our world is connected. What surprised you about this case? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this deep dive with your fellow UPSC enthusiasts. Until next time, keep diving deep into current events. You never know what you'll find. And as always, this was based on an article from The Hindu.